We have sound and video. We are recording.
Good evening. My name is Nikki Souza. I am the Vice Chair of the Community Advisory Committee for Ava Community Energy. Today is Monday, November 18th, and we are calling this meeting to order. We're here in the Oakland Center 1000 Broadway Suite 109 in Oakland. And we have also some remote locations listed here in Albany, Dublin, the Clipper Club, Irvington Community Center. There's a 9th Street back office location in Union City and Harvest Landing Lane, Tracy. So check the agenda if you are interested in visiting one of those locations for remote listening. And I'd like to start off with any members. Roll call. Roll call. Okay, so I'd like to take a roll call. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Member Landry.
Present.
Member Wanner. Present. Member Wilkerson.
Present.
Member Stevenson.
Here.
Member Swarmenthon. Member Lockstrom. Member Pacheco. Member Carr. Member Harper.
Present.
Member Lewis.
Present.
Vice Chair Susan.
Present.
Chair Hernandez. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Okay, are there any members from the public, or anybody from the public, I should say, that have any questions or comments? So we'll move along.
Yes, there is.
Okay.
Audrey Ichinose, you're recognized for 3 minutes. One second. My apologies, hold on a second. Okay, Audrey Ichinose, you're recognized for 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. I had to update my program, and so anyway, I hope you can hear me now.
Yes.
Thank you. My name is Audrey Ichinose, and I am a member of the East Bay Clean Power Alliance and also the statewide California Alliance for Community Energy. And my comment is really brief. I just want to encourage Ava to persevere in its local clean energy work. What's going to face us in the next couple of years will be very contentious and very determined efforts to halt and negate the progress that we have made in the fight against global warming and climate change. So I hope, in fact, that Ava will bear down and, in fact, increase its efforts. And it should know that it is fully supported by the communities that stand behind it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Susan Silver, you're recognized for 3 minutes.
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, hi, my name is Susan Silber, a resident of Berkeley. I'd like to speak about the important work of resilience hubs, and I know you've heard me speak before. So I really appreciate and thank Ava Community Energy for your current support for resilience hubs, but really asking that you specifically allocate millions more from your 23-24 budget surplus. I believe it's $179 million of surplus into the development of even more funding beyond the net billing tariff solar and storage programming. Because we've seen so much excitement in the environmental justice community for resilience hubs. And we know that if we, the community members, are given the proper resources, given flexible resources, resilient hubs have the power to be some of the most effective, equitable, scalable, and community-based organizing models out there to build local resilience. And we all know that with the Trump administration's commitment to defund environmental justice and climate solutions work, this funding is so urgent. So really, really urge you to consider funding not just also a network of, coalition work that really needs to be funded, as well as other types of programming for resilience hubs. So please consider funding beyond what you already have committed to, so that community centers, schools, health clinics, etc., can be considered for this type of programming. Thank you so much.
Thank you. There are no further hands raised.
Thank you. Thank you for the public comments. And and now I would like to have the approval of the minutes. Okay.
Quick.
Did you second?
Yes, I did. I second.
Great, thank you.
So shall we have a vote for the approval?
Or public comment?
Oh, any public comment for the minutes? Is anybody interested in saying anything about the minutes?
There are no hands raised at this time.
Great, thank you.
Good, thank you. Member Landry,
Yes.
Member Weenan. Member Buckleson,
Yes.
Member Stevenson,
Yes.
Member Harper,
Yes.
Member Lutz,
Yes.
Chair Susan.
Yes,
Minutes are approved.
thank you. So the minutes are approved. We have our first agenda item, which is our work plan, our chair report. Oh, the chair report, yes. So last October, we met and we had a great meeting. It was a long meeting. Everybody was well fed. We truly enjoyed meeting each other. And we came up with some wonderful ideas. I think they're very exciting for the Community Action Committee for AVA, Community Energy. And we're going to speak a little bit more about that later. And we also had some, mention and thank you for the wonderful food from our staff, especially Kate and Alex, everybody involved. Other than that, I think the meeting was a great success. I'm hoping that maybe we can have a few more deeper dives. And most of the meeting was ideas that came up for being progressive and to be proactive in what our actions are. Instead of being a little bit on the back end, we do approve things, but sometimes we would like to also lend a hand in bringing forth new technologies, ideas, and ideas from the public that will help everybody in win-win situations where both AVA Community Energy can grow and that the community can have better rates and we can have more local work, people from our areas getting jobs, And so there's things that we're going to be discussing, just as an example, resilience hubs and different power, perhaps something like offshore power or batteries or new technologies. And so we're going to be on the lookout, and we're going to be the scouts that we're going to be pushing forward any kind of ideas that we may be able to help our community and help the organization itself. So with that, does anybody have any comment or have any input as far as what we had last October, as far as our meeting? Does anybody? Yes.
Yes, we discussed many topics last time, I thought, and topics that I think may not have been included in this summary. And I'd like to see all the topics that we discussed, and not, because I think that the Community Advisory Committee should synthesize for itself, along with staff, but synthesize for itself what the priorities are. And one of the things that, just on its, brief reading of this, I don't see, I think we need to reintroduce the local development business plan. We always have new onboarding of new CAC members and alternates, and that is a cornerstone of what the Community Advisory Committee does. So I would like to see that. I know it talks about local development programs. I don't know if this is inclusive of actually discussing the elements of the local development business plan, what its purpose is, and what the goals are that we hope to achieve along with the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more comments as far as last month's work session?
Well, for me, being a new member, it was really great meeting the staff and actually seeing them in action. I really enjoyed that and learned a lot too.
Yeah, it's good to place a face with a name. Well, with that then, so I guess we can go right into, yes?
Are we voting on this now, or we're not?
Well, there's no vote, is there? Okay. Yeah. What we'll do right now is actually we'll go into the item 5, which is
Okay.
the work plan. So starting with that, our
Hi, Vicki.
staff is here.
Yes.
Oh, there we go. Thank you, Alex.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Sorry I can't be there in person this evening with you, but I am very happy to be able to bring this topic forward for you. And apropos of Member Landry's comments. So what we have here is a summary, not so much of all of the substance of the discussion or all the subject matters that were proposed, although those are available in the packet for the previous meeting, in the survey that we sent out, and then we published the responses. So all that subject matter was captured there. But this summary is really about how the committee intends to prioritize all those many subjects and energy related topics that they want to explore and discuss and provide feedback on. And so really as kind of an intermediate step in this process, staff has taken what was discussed at the meeting at the previous meeting, synthesized it here for your review and your feedback so that we can then use that to develop an updated work plan, which in the work plan is less about individual subject matter topics. It's more about how to prioritize which of those topics to focus on in the coming year. So what we found during that robust discussion that we had with everyone was there's both a desire to talk about and discuss and provide feedback on items that are coming before the board each month, but then there's also kind of the larger topics that aren't necessarily agendized every month or even every year that the body wants to discuss and that staff could use the committee's feedback on and that the public wants to engage on. And so really we divided that into two broad categories. There's the category of recurring board items and these are those larger items that we know are going to come before the board. We have lots of lead time on when they do come before the board. And those are budgeting, which occurs May, June, for example. There's the legislative priorities. I know tonight there's going to be a legislative review. So that's another example of items that come up every year. And then there's the integrated resource planning, and that occurs every other year. And then there's the non-reoccurring items that may still be agendized on any given month, or even when they aren't agendized for the board, this committee will still want to engage on those topics. And so as we've listed here, those can range from anything from oftentimes there's local development and programs, and that covers, as everyone knows, that covers many different topics from local energy generation, critical municipal facilities, resilience, transportation electrification. A lot of the topics that this committee wants to discuss in more detail will often be in the local development category. Then, of course, there's policy, and that comes to address regulatory and legislative issues that could come outside of the annual legislative cycle. And then there's marketing and public engagement, and kind of the example there that's probably queued up most proximately is going to be the outreach to Stockton and Lathrop as those jurisdictions begin service in 2025. So in order to try to make sure that this committee and the public has an opportunity to engage on both those reoccurring items and those non-reoccurring items, we will continue to work with the chair, we staff that is, will continue to work with the chair and the vice chair and members of this committee to prioritize items that fall within those categories. But then when there are items that the committee wants to delve into in a lot more depth, such as those listed here, we can do that, and this was discussed at last month's meeting, we can do that on an ad hoc basis where those members of the committee who are interested in investigating these topics or topics that would fall into an ad hoc category, if they want to investigate those on their own, develop a summary or a report or something more formal to then bring back to this committee, I think we can then agendize it for this committee, and then the feedback that this committee has on that particular topic can come to the board. Again, this is just a summary for how we want to prioritize the work plan. It doesn't cover every topic that this committee is going to certainly want to discuss, but this was the summary of what was discussed at the previous board meeting, previous CAC meeting, and with our direction to come back with a proposed work plan of priorities. So that's what you have before you. And with that, I'm happy to take questions and certainly to receive feedback so that we can develop a final version of this to then bring to the board for its approval. And then that will become the new work plan for the CAC. So with that, if there are questions, I'd be happy to address them.
So we have a question, Jim. Mr. Litz.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. Couple things that I wanted to, one of the things that I didn't see on sort of, they're not recurring board items. They sort of fit under the non-recurring, but you don't have them listed there. And that would be requirements from the CEC and the PUC about revisions on the emissions reporting, the public posting of the rates into the database. And, you know, I don't know when those will come up but, you know, emissions, the emissions scoring has created a lot of controversy, and I know the state is going to be requiring hourly emissions reporting, and that's going to be an hourly, I don't know what it all is, generation and resource adequacy and all that. So that's a big topic that's coming that I didn't see on there. And probably should be, but I'm not sure how to get it into the CAC agenda in time so that we can actually provide the board with feedback on it, or, you know, questions to staff to help clarify it before they bring it to the board. So that was one sort of set of items. Another one was in the founding documents, there's supposed to be the 5-year update of the local business development plan. And we've gotten bits and pieces of it, but never a full presentation of it. And I remember at either the last meeting or one of the previous ones, Ed was talking about having an annual report from the staff to the board, the CAC, and the community on what AVA's been up to, what they're doing, you know, not just number of customers served, but also what sort of programs have been developed, what's the impact, what's the local development impact. And then I don't know that whether it needs to go on this or not, but there were, and maybe that's more in the third category, is the ad hoc, I don't know, working groups or something. Maybe that's just up to us to organize and work with Adrian and Howard to figure out how we do it without violating too many restrictions.
We're going to talk about that. I have a question for you, or actually maybe the staff. So the rates and emissions, we have seen them, right? They do report on them.
They report them, but the way they're going to be reported changes in a year or two, and I don't remember the particulars of it, but it shifts from the full year thing to hourly.
Right.
Or monthly by hour of day or something like that. And then there's also the requirement that the rates be put up into a public database. So any energy aggregators and the virtual power plant people can figure out when's the best time to use energy in advance, so that, you know, you're not using it when it's the most expensive. So I don't know if there's staff here to deal with those things tonight, but those were things that are probably going to make a big change on how all the reports on what it does.
Hey, with this, yes, thank you.
Hi, so I'm Todd Edminster. I'm the head of the policy group here. We are the primary interface between AVA and the state and federal government, and that includes the state agencies. So Jim, I think he's talking about two separate things. There's the Power Source Disclosure Program, which both the things you're talking about are CEC administered. The Power Source Disclosure Program, which is where we, among other things, disclose emissions, and then that rolls up into the power content label that goes out with the bills. That's thing one, and that is pursuant to Senate Bill 1158 from 2022, going to require hourly reporting on emissions to the CEC beginning in 2028. Now, it's not clear what the CEC is going to do with that information, but we are required to provide it to them. What happens after that is still up in the air, and the particulars of the reporting are still up in the air. We've been waiting a while for the CEC to put out a notice of proposed rulemaking that fleshes out how they're going to implement that reporting requirement. Haven't seen it yet, so still waiting on that. So that's thing one. The second piece was well, it's the uploading of our rates to, in one case, a CEC administered database, in another, a CEC directed, but still up in the air as to who's going to oversee it database. And all of this is rolled up under the load management standards rubric. And I've presented on this a couple of times for those who've been here. I think all you guys have been here for at least one of those presentations. And that's, so again, two databases. One is the MIDAS database, and we're already uploading all of our time variant rates into MIDAS. And then the second is the single statewide tool, which right now is still in the conceptual stage. But at some point, the idea is that we and all the other load serving entities will post all of our rates there, and then that will be a place where various service providers can go and pull down rates and either shop those to customers or use them to control devices, which is the real desired end state here, right? Internet of Things, and your refrigerator will run more or less depending on electricity prices, for example. But, so all of these things are in play. We are keeping our eye on / participating in the development of all of these things. In terms of how that impacts you guys, I don't really know. And in terms of sort of the when and how, I can't say that either, because like on the hourly reporting, you know, the CCC gets to it when they get to it.
Yeah, I know
Anyway.
there's new technologies. We had I can't remember the company that was going to be, I guess, kind of having a on-the-fly kind of movement of, first of all, the capture, but also rates and how rates would be changing and then capturing of data. But we've had a couple presentations on that, and I can't remember the names of the companies that we were looking at for that. But I'm sure that is going to play into how AVA Community Energy responds, and also what's put out for the public and for everybody to see. So, you know, that would be tons of data if it's on the fly. Right?
Yeah, I don't think any of this is dealing with like real-time consumer data.
Okay.
That's a separate thing. So right now there's like the Green Button program, but all of the data that you can obtain through Green Button is lagged. That may be a little ways down the road. What this is about is sort of automated, not even sort of, it is automated demand response. So the service that has your rate would have that automated in some way, and it would be keyed to change the behavior of your appliance in response to the rate versus collecting data. Yeah,
That's already in place.
I mean,
Cheers, Susan, if I may. Todd, thank you for that explanation. I would like to steer us back to the CAC work plan, if I could,
Yeah.
only because I know that when this is one of the challenges of dealing with such a rich and diverse group of experts and expertise is that we want to get into the meat of it each time, and staff is right there with you. We want to too, but for the purposes of this item, I just want to steer us back to prioritizing things so that we can get to that topic when the time is appropriate. So this is why we're not listing out every single topic exhaustively in this work plan. This would fall within the kind of policy and regulatory updates that staff, that Todd and his team will routinely give to the board. And then when it becomes a board agenda item, we will bring that to the CAC as well, so that the CAC can weigh in on that. In the meantime, if the CAC wants to do its own research on topics like this, then then it would go to the ad hoc category. And so from there, as long as we don't create a quorum, those CAC members who want to dive into it can do so. So I just wanted to bring us back, because I know everyone is really eager to get into a lot of the details there, and I just want to make sure that we can stay focused on the work plan so that we can get it approved, and then we can get into the weeds with all of these topics.
Thank you, Alex, for keeping us on track. I do have a question, or actually a statement, maybe. The 1 and 2, typically the reoccurring and the non-reoccurring board items, we are familiar with those, right? Those are the ones that we've been working with. And it's really number 3, which is the CAC initiated items, unless somebody, or maybe some of our, because we're working on other things, any of the previous items may drop off from our normally programming for our meetings. So, Alex, is anything going to fall off as far as our normal, what we've seen in the past?
No, I wouldn't expect so. Certainly not from what's listed here. I mean, the annual budgeting happens every year. There's always a legislative cycle each year. The integrated resource planning, that the IRP process itself is every other year, but then there's throughout the year procurement related items that we'll bring to the board and that the CAC can weigh in on. And then again, if there are procurement related or technical related issues that the CAC wants to investigate further, then of course it can do so on the ad hoc basis. So no, I don't see this list of priorities changing, but really, again, we're not trying to be comprehensive with the items that are listed here. Those are just examples. We're trying to provide a structure for how the committee can prioritize, since there are so many topics and that the board covers so much. We're trying to identify which topics have a lot of lead time, which have less lead time, but we know that the CAC has interest in it. And then what are the topics that may not be coming before the board at all, and that the CAC wants to initiate to bring to the board. Does that help?
Yes, it does. It does. So we'll still have only so much time, a block of time, and we will hit as many as we can and include these CAC initiated items. And we did have a question from Member Landry. So Member Landry.
It's not necessarily a question. What I would like to see added, Alex, and I don't know if I need to make a motion, is under 1, reoccurring board items. Member Lutz referred to it earlier. I would like to see the local development business plan and metrics, measurements added to this work plan, please. So do I need to make a motion, or can that be added? Because I think that's fundamental to what the CAC does and advocates here for.
Yeah, thank you, Member Landry. And yeah, we intended to capture that with the first bullet under the non-reoccurring items.
Well, I don't see it in all.
Sorry, I only limit it to the acronym without spelling out the acronym, trying to avoid a parenthetical within a parenthetical. But LDBP stands for Local Development Business Plan. So that we did intend to specifically identify that.
So that's going to be under number 1, bullet 4?
No, number 2, bullet 1.
Yes, thank you. Number 2, bullet 1.
Want it to be on a recurring basis.
Yeah, I would like to be, yeah, I think it needs to be a reoccurring board item.
Member, I
Yes.
think the recurring board items refers to the AVA Board of Directors rather than us. That's what my understanding.
Yeah,
The non-recurring board items can be agendized and discussed by us at every meeting. But the recurring board items, like the annual budgeting, they want us to consider that when they want to consider it.
Yes, but I think also the board should be looking at it. I don't know, I don't think we have authority over the, what the board does.
Unfortunately.
But I think it needs to be looked at annually, and they also have members that, are added. What do you think, Alex?
yeah, no, I appreciate it. Yeah, and unfortunately, we can't, this committee can't really determine for the board when and which issues it looks at, although this committee is free to investigate issues that it prioritizes. So, so certainly if the CAC wants to review local development generally, or the local development business plan specifically on an annual basis, or even more frequently than that, the CAC can do that. And the CAC could also discuss it on an ad hoc basis. But one thing I will say is that local development and programmatic issues that like go into the local development business plan are certainly going to be brought to the board as they mature, as they already are, and as this body has already discussed. So those will continue to come to this body as part of the items that go to the board. The board doesn't have in place like an annual LDBP review as they do for the budget. That if the CAC wants to recommend that, the CAC could do so. I would just encourage the CAC to like probably spend some time discussing that on an ad hoc basis, developing more of a proposal around that, if that makes sense. That's what that's what kind of the third category is really intended to do, is for the CAC, for its preferred subject matter priorities, to develop reports or proposals around those to then bring to the board.
Okay, I think
Thank you. Yeah. Member Weiner.
Thank you. I think the way this is organized is in our relationship to the board. So recurring board items are things they want us to talk about. But instead of calling it that, I would call it, I'm not trying to wordsmith here exactly, but on number 1, instead of saying recurring board items, it would be recurring consideration of recommendations to the board and the second one or third one, it says CAC initiated items, but we might want a place for our or for CAC recommendations to the board for its consideration. So it's policy considerations that we have that we want to initiate. There's always a little bit of tension between a board and an advisory committee, because the board wants an advisory committee, but doesn't really want to be told, want it too much. So to the extent that we want to provide recommendations to the board, then it seems to me that we want to change the nomenclature here a little bit so that it's items for, recommendations by the committee to the board for their action.
Thank you, Member Weiner. So just so I'm taking notes while we're talking. So just so I understand the preferred nomenclature, it would be recurring consideration of recommendations to the board. Did I have that right?
Yeah, recurring recommendations to the board. And then on its agenda items, and then its It's somewhere what we want is that when the CAC has initiated items, it's not just for the CAC. It's CAC initiated items for possible recommendation to the board for action. Because that's our function.
Right.
Does that make sense, Alec?
Yeah, I follow you there with the last one. With the first one, I think it sounds like it's going to be recommendations to the board on recurring items. Is that, I think I've got that. Recommendations on, because, okay, yeah, because we
On the
don't have,
last one, I think it's basically CAC initiated items for policy recommendations to the board.
what, can I just say recommendations to the board? Because maybe some will be policy, but some will be, I don't know, programmatic, or some will be procurement related. So could we say CAC initiated items for recommendation to the board?
Sure.
Okay.
I like all those P words.
I tried to write all that down, and I can't read it now. But so hopefully you captured that, Alex. Well, that's a good start to our list here, which is our work plan update, which we are still working on. And I'd like to actually start talking about how to shape item 3, which is the CAC initiated items, and the ad hoc CAC committees formation. With that, we did have a little bit of direction here. And what I understand is that we could, there were 3, maybe there were a few mentioned from the last meeting, and we could pick one to start with, such as the resiliency hubs, or some sort of power generation or technology. And what we would do with that is to have volunteers or people who are interested within the CAC, as well as some of the alternate members, so they can get involved as well and have some kind of mixing and everybody's learning together. But we would need to also follow the guidelines of the quorum. So from what I understand, we discussed maybe 5 or 6 or 4.
Under 7.
Under 7, definitely under 7. Members would have their own ad hoc development committee where they would have a goal, such as a report or a presentation that they could put together and then present first to the community action committee at large, and then we could help shape that perhaps under quorum, and then perhaps we could make it to the point where it would be presentable to the board. And then we would present it as an action item to the board or a informational item to the board. Not sure yet, but some comments on that.
One of the things that I brought up last time was about the city of Piedmont's working on their electrification. We're doing a survey about electrification because we're finding we're not meeting our emissions goals. And so we're focusing on residences and trying to find out what are the barriers, what people's experiences are around electrification of their homes. So I could share that, or if that would be a topic, because I'm trying to figure out, I think all of our towns are going through the same thing, trying to meet the residential goals. I don't know if that would fit under what we're talking about, but we're having a meeting, I think it's December 9th, where the survey will be completed by November 30th. And then we're having an electrification task force meeting to discuss the survey. So I don't know when the results will be ready, but I could bring that, or if anyone's interested in talking about residential electrification.
Oh,
It doesn't have to be a priority, but it just down the road, however, just wanted to throw it out there as an example.
well, December 9th is right around the corner, but
Well, we would probably take a while to process it, so maybe in the new year.
well, what if it took, a month or two? Would they still be, would it still be pertinent to help them?
I think so. We have 6 meetings that we're doing this.
So, Chair Souza, if I may, that sounds like a great proposal. Electrification generally and using Piedmont, if Member Balkasoon is generous enough to offer to help facilitate that with what the city of Piedmont's doing, that would be great. I think for the purposes of the work plan, the CAC initiated items with the adjusted nomenclature, it doesn't have to be an exhaustive list. So what's there right now are just examples. This could certainly be something, and I mean, it sounds like a great thing to pursue. For the purposes of this item now, though, you don't necessarily need to decide which ad hoc committees are going to be formed. In fact, I would kind of advise against it because there may be some future ideas that come up at the next meeting as well. And also if Member Balkasoon's proposal really starts to take shape, there might be, there just might be other aspects to this that we don't necessarily need to determine right now for the work plan's sake.
I like that, and I think that there will be many items to consider. So perhaps we should put together a bucket list, and then we could have some sort of format where people can sign up and be part of one of those bucket list items. Maybe in that way vote to say, okay, well, there's 6 members interested in resiliency hubs. And then we would form something to have a shell meeting, for instance. Recommendations for safety, recommendations for documentation, and then maybe, a progress line on that item. And so we can have some sort of a process with which to work on these ad hoc items.
To develop sort of an outline, like a straw person, in order to do that.
Yeah, so maybe an outline.
I'm sure each member has a specific interest that we'd all like to pursue.
Yeah, a future CAC meeting could be devoted entirely or largely to just determining which ad hoc issues or which issues we want to discuss on an ad hoc basis and what ad hoc subcommittees to form around them. But for the purposes of this item, it's really just this general structure of these 3 categories that staff is looking for feedback and then ultimately approval on so that we can bring it to the board for approval.
So just, so everybody can, I'm just gonna read this out loud. The first one is energy affordability. The second one is emerging tech, COM. And that includes bidirectional charging and offshore wind, etc. And the last one is local CAPs or community action plans or city community action plans.
Oh, climate action plans.
Climate
action.
Climate actions.
Yeah, and the COM was sorry, it was again, that was supposed to be short for committee. So like an ad hoc subcommittee of the CAC could just examples, could be an emerging technology committee with those types of things. And then a local climate action planning committee, which would, engage with cities around helping them implement their climate action plan goals through AVA's various programs and service options and things like that. So that there's a little more color behind those examples.
I would, Member Lutz, I was just gonna ask
A
for some help.
couple comments. One on what Alex reports to the board. I would like to see item 3 reworded to the way Peter described it as CAC initiated recommendations to the board and described that way. I would also suggest that Member Landry, myself, and maybe Ed Hernandez, unless he gets, hopefully he gets elected, and then he wouldn't be on the board, but if he doesn't, that we put together an ad hoc on recommendations for an annual or a biannual report of what AVA is doing that staff could prepare to present to the board, the CAC, and draw from for the community. So that's an example of the ad hoc committees that you were talking about, Alex, and it seems like one that is been talked about and that there may be some need. And then the other one, and I wouldn't, I'm not sure I want to volunteer for it, but there is a lot of interest in resilience hubs. And I don't think we need to wait till next meeting to set up an ad hoc committee to work with Ayla and the LCE and Susan Silver on an ad hoc committee to develop sort of a proposed CAC recommend strategy for the board to adopt regarding resilience hubs. So I would say those, you don't have to report back to the board on them because that's just the CAC doing ad hoc stuff. But I don't want to wait till next meeting to start those too, because they seem to have enough interest already.
Member Landry.
Thank you, Member Lutz, for your comments. I think we got a letter today, I don't know if it's in this packet, from the local Clean Energy Alliance, and they were, I believe if I read it correctly, they were offering to do an educational training on resilience hubs. And I would like to see that agendized perhaps at our next board meeting where they could do a presentation. I don't know how much time they would need, but they would probably need at least 30 minutes or something if we could have.
Well, in that case, with the present members present, I would like to maybe get the ball rolling on the resiliency hubs and just take a quick poll of who would be interested in getting that kicked off, or maybe chairing it, or not chairing it, but leading it.
Well, they want to do a presentation, so I would like to have the benefit of a presentation here, and then we could form a committee. I mean, that was my thinking, because I think they offered to do it, so.
Well, it might make sense to have a couple board members meet with them and hash out what would be appropriate, whether it's a workshop or an ad hoc committee, taking that information, or maybe, I don't know, tours, public tours that are open to board members and CAC members of resilience hubs to see what they're like. But I don't, it seems like a half-hour presentation without some feedback and interaction from CAC members on what makes sense, and what are they trying to do, and if the CAC wants to make recommendations to the board, it's going to have to be more fleshed out than just a half-hour workshop here.
Well,
So maybe it's appropriate for the ad hoc committee to meet with the LCEA and you know, start off with the workshop and then come up with a longer-term strategic plan to recommend to the board on what AVA should be doing long-term about resilience hubs. I don't, you know, I'm not,
Well,
I don't want to limit it to 1 half-hour workshop that ends up with, oh, that was nice to know.
Oh, no.
What do we
I
do
mean,
next?
A workshop, you know, today's workshop is Zoom meetings or even online collaboration, say, you know, documents. And, but somebody would probably be leading that, putting it, you know, putting the pieces together. And so I do think that somebody, if we're going to do the resiliency hubs, if, you know, we're gonna try and start, I think we need to put together that container for participation in this this goal, this object that we're trying to create.
Chair Souza, if I may, it sounds like resilience hubs would be a terrific inaugural topic for category number 3 for the CAC initiated recommendations to the board. So I would say, just in terms of order of operations, I think the first thing we should do is wrap up getting the feedback and approval from the committee on this work plan outline, and then after that, everything's in place for the committee to move forward with researching resilience hubs in a lot more detail. And they can do that in any number of ways. It could be those self-identifying CAC members who want to meet with LCEA to kind of get a more fleshed out proposal to then bring at the next meeting or whatever time they deem appropriate. So just in terms of order of operations, first I advise that we wrap up the feedback on the work plan itself, and then we can get into how to implement it once it's finalized.
Very good. Alex, what I'm hoping that we accomplish today is starting to not just look at your beautiful document and this outline here, but also perhaps to have something to jump off from, such as you know, the outlines that we're talking about, any kind of items that may need to be included as far as rules and regulations, safety, and any kind of resources that we may need. So is that possible today, or should we continue this at another time? Can I have some?
Well, maybe in the interest of time, I would move that we adopt the draft CAC work plan with the changes that Peter suggested to the third bullet. And then after we've done that, then kick off, see if anybody wants to start some of those ad hoc committees and, you know, have one or two people appointed to go off and do their committee ad hoc work and then bring it back to the CAC at a later date. But for now, I'm actually making a motion.
Okay.
I'll second that emotion.
Okay, can you restate that then?
That we approve the draft CAC work plan that Alex presented with the modification to item 3 that Peter brought up.
He made a motion to, I mean, he mentioned number 1 too.
Well, it was the CAC
Recommendations to board.
CAC initiated recommendations. I don't know if we want to list them all, but to the board, and make it clear that item 3 is work we do that we want the board to consider. I mean, we can't tell them to adopt it, but we would like, you know, we're going to bring things to the board for them to consider. We want them to know that we're going to be doing that. Whether they pay any attention to us or not is up to
We
them.
won't put that in the motion.
No, that's not part of the
Please no.
motion.
Okay, so what I'm hearing then is that our item today for the CAC work plan is to move forward with Alex's recommendation for this outline, which is the reoccurring board items and non-reoccurring board items, and the 3 CAC initiated items with the change to some of the verbiage with CAC initiated recommendations documented here. And that's what we're,
Right, but, and I think, Alex, the headings 1, 2, and 3 were the important part. The subheadings, you know, these are examples and not limited to these.
Correct. Right, correct. Yeah, the whole idea is to not keep this, is to keep this elastic or expansive and not to limit it. So, I have from the change to the verbiage is for number 1, to change it to, instead of recurring items, recommendations to the board on recurring items. And then for 3, CAC initiated items for recommendation to the board. Those are the two updated, that's the updated language I have.
That's what I was, better than I can say it.
thank you. Member Landry.
Yes, I would like to, I don't know if this is an amendment or a friendly amendment.
Use your mic.
Oh, I'm sorry, thank you. I would like to add a friendly amendment that on 2 non-recurring board items to be agendized, discussed at a CAC meeting. We have local development programs, e.g. local development business plan. I would like to see the reference to the survey linked in that item, so that, you know, that survey is there that the public or we could refer to. If you could move, provide a link there, please.
Sure, that would be a link to the survey of CAC members leading up to the meeting we had last month.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Yes, happy to include that.
All right then. So I think this is our you had an action, you had a vote.
It's a motion.
And, or Peter did, sorry.
We should vote.
We should vote. Okay, can we take a vote, please?
Thank you. Member Landry.
Yes.
Member Weiner. Weiner. Member Robinson.
Yes.
Member Stevenson.
Yes.
Member Harper.
Yes.
Member Lewis.
Yes.
Chair Susan.
Yes.
Motion is approved.
Great.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well done. Thank you, Alex. All right. With that, just before, did you have a, sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just, did you have a question?
I was going to make a suggestion that wasn't quite a motion, which is that the Resilience Hub issue has been raised. It was raised in a couple of letters that we received
Yes.
at the committee. It's been raised by others on the committee. It's something I don't know anything about, or at least not enough. So my proposal would be that instead of splitting up into committees, that we actually have a session where we have someone present on Resilience Hubs, what they are, their function within AVA now, what more can be done. So we get a feeling of what they are, what's already being done, what's left to do, and have that as part of one of our meetings.
From the staff,
Pardon?
from Ava's staff.
Well, I would like it from Ava's staff, and to the extent that it's pertinent to invite people from the community to make public comment on the staff presentation, I think that's fine too. But I think, yeah, from the staff.
Would this be part of the ad hoc, or would it just be?
No, this is part of the CAC. It would be a great, it's agendized issue or presentation, say for our next meeting. I don't think we need an ad hoc committee for it. If we're all interested in it, let's figure out what we're doing with it and what we think should be done.
I agree with that, because I think the idea of us learning together, rather than breaking off, I mean, there's some things that, you know, like, that each different city can bring that we
Right.
represent. But I think that to learn it together and to hear from what Ava is doing, the staff is probably much more helpful.
So would this be something that we would visit next month at the monthly meeting, or would we
If
make it?
staff were ready in time, give us a short presentation, say 20 minutes or whatever, I'm sure they can, a month from now is a long time. And they can put together a short presentation with little slides and fancy colors. And, you know, to show us what we're talking about. Are they important, or are they just a frill? Are they something we should all be working toward or not? And if we are, is there an equity issue, et cetera, et cetera. So I just think that having a presentation from staff, I mean, we've got, 2.5 hours or whatever we have for our meetings.
Well, we have to be very careful about quorum, because otherwise we would have to agendize it, we would have to make it public, so.
No, I don't mind making it
But I
public.
think that's fine if it's public.
I'm saying make it public.
Okay.
Can I say something, please? Thank you, Peter. You articulated it better than I did, because I do think there's enough consensus in this room that we do need a training and educational forum on this. And what I hope I said earlier also was that the local Clean Energy Alliance was willing. They sent a letter today, and they were willing to provide that. But whoever does the forum, doesn't make any difference to me, as long as,
So
we
is
get
that,
yeah.
so it sounds like we need some help from staff, and then we could contact the local Clean Energy Alliance and put together a date, see how fast we can get this together. Or we could agendize it for the next meeting. But I don't, Alex, do you have any ideas as who would puts this training for resiliency hubs into play?
Yeah, so I mean, if it seems the idea of the ad hoc was not to require the committee, the CAC, to go through an ad hoc process. If the committee already feels like, if the chair really believes that, based on the feedback from the committee, that everyone wants to agendize this topic for a future meeting, you're more than welcome to do so. And as far as how staff can help facilitate that, I'll have to give that some thought. But Kate and I can go back and see what the best way of coordinating with LCEA, how to go about doing that. Just to be candid, we haven't done that before, so I'm not exactly sure what the process would be. But we're certainly here to help facilitate those types of things. And so, so as far as agendizing it for a future meeting, that's something that's within the discretion of the chair of the committee to do. I of course, without speaking with LCA, I don't know what their timeline or their plans would be. But we can follow up with you, Chair Souza, and Chair Hernandez, or even individual members of the committee, to help coordinate that and help facilitate that.
I just want to be clear that my proposal isn't that we have to have someone from the community participate. I want to give them an opportunity to do so. But I think the most important thing is to get staff to commit to giving us that presentation. So I think that's for Alec and others to take back to staff and say, all right, how long would it take us to do this? And can we do it next month? In which case we can agendize it and go forward. I'd just like to agendize it at the earliest possible time we can, because I see people are asking for money and so on, and why not response?
So do we need a motion?
I have a question.
Oh, Davis.
I just wanted to chime in, that I've read the letter that LCEA submitted, and I also support getting a study session facilitated. In terms of organizing that, it's a little bit surprising to hear that's not something that Ava's done before, but I think just as simple as getting a time on the calendar and ensuring that Local Clean Energy Alliance has ample time to come in person, ideally would be super helpful. If we can at least put it like a month out in advance, I'd love to put together a list of questions that I have in particular about resilience hubs, and that I have for Ava staff as well. And I'd like to see what questions Ava staff have about resilience hubs too. And frankly, just what, if any, policy positions or programs exist at Ava that staff think are relevant for the conversation. And then I'll add, for my own personal background, I have worked on helping develop a community resilience hub, working with an environmental justice group based in Stockton and the National Renewable Energy Lab. So I would be happy to offer my time offline to help organize it as well. Thanks.
Well, thank you very much. That's very generous of you, Davis. I too would like to be part of the Resiliency Hub discussions and trainings and anything I can do to help. That said, I do think that at the very least, we should agendize it for the next meeting, if it can be done prior to that, with all possible haste. Alex, if you can let us know, if you can throw us, but not throw something together, but to make something happen ahead of time, because this seems to have some urgency to it. That would be great.
I just wanted to remind, there is a motion and a second, I believe, on the floor.
For the,
Oh, for the work plan, we haven't voted yet?
oh, didn't we vote that? For that? We voted. We all approved it.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. I think unanimously, yes, we did.
I have a question.
Oh, yes, I thank you. I do understand. Okay. Yeah, so if you look at, Alex, maybe this would help hasten the possible training session. There is a letter from the Clean Power Alliance, the local Clean Power Alliance, and they're making that offer to do a presentation, which I think there's a lot of interest in. So I don't know if you or I could contact them, and maybe we can start building our training. Maybe I'll just be in contact with you. Okay. You're on. Okay.
Sorry, yes, that's what I would propose, is that we follow up at,
We'll do that. Okay.
we can figure out
I
what
will-
next steps.
I will talk with you and Ed, and we'll put something together. Okay.
Sounds good.
Very good. All right, so we can move on. With that, we'd like to move to our next agenda item, the updating of the board on the 2024 legislation.
Good evening, everybody. Again, Todd Edmister, the head of the policy group here at AVA. I'd like to begin with a couple of introductions as well as news on departures. So my colleague, who was the head of our legislative group, Alec Ward, has returned to Virginia to be with his family. It's a loss for the organization, but of course we wish him well. And Feby Bodiardo has left to go to CEJA, the California Environmental Justice Alliance. I think a number of folks know her from her involvement in LCEA over the years. And again, sad to see her go, but she's pursuing her passion, and we wish her the best. So here with me today are our two newest members of the team. To my left is Dominic Faria. He's coming to us from Senator Feinstein's office. And to my right is Kendall Downey, who's coming to us from UCLA, who will be a coordinator and a fellow, respectively, within the policy group. And then we also have one other new member of the team joining us tomorrow, and I'll introduce her at the next meeting. But she's not here with us today. So the only perennial is change, as they say. But thrilled to have Dominic and Kendall here, and Feby and Alec are still in the game and not far from us. So we'll continue to deal with them in the years to come. So with that backdrop, I'm going to turn to, I see we have the deck up, the 2024 fall legislative update. Also here with me today, although not visible on the screen at the moment, is Dan Chia from Omni Consulting in Sacramento. Dan is our lobbyist on state legislative matters. He and I will be tag teaming the presentation as we go through all of this. Chia, C-H-I-A, yeah, with Omni Consulting. And then I note as well that there's an accompanying memorandum as part of the packet. The memorandum is narrowly focused simply on the bills on which Ava was directed to take a position when we presented to the board on the time year ahead back in May. The deck here will be a little bit broader in its scope. So before we turn to the particular bills, I'm going to hand the mic to Dan to talk a little bit about the state legislative process, and we'll sort of lay the groundwork for the individual bills as we get to them. So Dan, why don't you take it away?
Great, thanks, Todd. Can everybody see and hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Great, fantastic. Again, for the record, Dan Shaw with Omni Government Relations, Ava's contract lobbyist. Next slide, please. It's the agenda, one more. Okay. This is just a calendar overview of what occurred. Just a rough sketch of some of the key deadlines in the process. We'll see a similar slide for the upcoming legislative year, but just for your sort of reference. It convened January 3rd of the year, adjourned August 31st, and the governor had about a month from that date to sign or veto bills. Next slide, please. Over 2,000 bills were introduced, not terribly out of the ordinary, in fact, for your average legislature. 1,200 or so of those bills reached the governor's desk, and he signed a little over 1,000 and vetoed 189, which is roughly a 16% veto rate, which again isn't terribly out of the norm for the past couple legislative years. Just broad areas of concern for the legislature, not only on the energy arena. Many of these I'm sure you have were tracking or had heard of: retail crime, AI, the insurance crisis, and of course electricity affordability. Next slide. Drilling down on energy-related topics, you'll see here a list of more detailed items. Building decarb, the income graduated fixed charge was a very active topic towards the beginning of the year. And then these other ones you see here, relatively common items that are raised most years. With the exception of the last one, the climate bond, which was the measured Prop 4 that passed just this past election, there was legislation to put that bond on the ballot. Next slide. I believe I'll turn this over back to you, right, Todd?
Yep, thanks, Dan.
Yep.
So against that backdrop, we enter into AVA and the positions that it took on bills and how we got to the positions that we did. We had made, we staff had made recommendations based on our legislative program. There's a link there, it's available on the website. And as noted here, the program sets our broad brush priorities: decarbonization, local development, and community CCA stability, essentially. Ultimately, the board determines our final positions. We present, staff can make recommendations, but it's up to the board to decide what it wants to take positions on and what those positions will be. So what follows is a laundry list of bills, and this is drawn from the presentation that we made back in May, as well as the positions that AVA ultimately took on those bills and what happened to them over the course of the session. And they're bucketed by topic areas. So if we go back to the 8 categories that Dan mentioned, the bills are assigned to their corresponding category. I'll actually go a little bit out of order. If we go to the very last one, the Brown Act, this is on slide 10, AB 817. We did support this. This was our attempt to let you guys take these meetings from home. You're welcome. Unfortunately, it did not pass, so here we are. And if you do choose to take the meeting remotely, you have to announce where you're doing it from, and members of the public have to be able to show up. So sorry about that, but I did want to flag that we made an effort. Jim?
Is it completely dead, or
Yeah,
are there rumors of it reviving next year?
I haven't heard anything. I don't know, Dan, do you know if there's any kind of a push for Brown Act?
I do not know, but it wouldn't surprise me that this or a similar version would be introduced. There were several Brown Act bills, mostly all allowing more flexibility in meetings such as this. So and I don't believe many of them made it to the governor's desk. So my guess, and just a guess, is that some will be reintroduced, and I can double check on that, report back through Todd.
Okay, so with that note, as I worm my way into your good graces, we can go back up to the head of the list here. So category 1, of course, is affordability. This is probably the single largest issue facing the legislature and all of us in the electric space going ahead. So unsurprisingly, there were a large number of bills concerning it. And you can see the fate of them here. They kind of can be subdivided into a couple of broad brush categories. So there's AB 2672 and SB 1130, both of which expand low-income ratepayer support programs. So CARE is the state program, California Alternative Rates for Energy. It provides subsidies for both gas and electricity bills for low-income qualified customers. And so both of these bills passed and were signed into law. That's a good thing for our lower income folks. We supported both of those. And then lower down, we've got SB 1292, another Bradford bill, and AB 1999. These are both income graduated fixed charge bills. You may recall back in April, I and my colleague Michael Quiros did an in-depth presentation on IGFC. I won't repeat that here, but if you are interested, you can go back to the April board materials. It's item 21, and have a look at it. But the bottom line is that neither of these bills went anywhere, and we are going to be operating under the framework that the PUC adopted. The legislature ultimately did not weigh in to change that. So there we are. And then finally, I want to flag for you AB 3264. This was one that we were not particularly tracking on, but about 3 days before the end of the legislative session, it was amended to include within its ambit CCAs. And so we put it here because again, all the way through the legislative session, we didn't think it was going to apply to us. We thought it was just a reporting requirement or set of reporting requirements that were going to be applicable to IOUs regarding state-funded EE and demand response programs, but at the last second, it became IOU and CCA programs. So it does impose some reporting requirements on us. If we flash back to the memo for a sec, you'll see that we summarized some of the financial impacts. We know that this will require additional reporting for us and that there will be costs associated with compliance. Sorry, is there a question?
Oh, no, I was, what bill are you referring to?
Oh, AB 3264.
It's the second one on the list there.
Yeah, I've been jumping around a little bit as I bucket these somewhat and try and
Question?
take a look. Peter.
Why was 1292 vetoed?
Basically, the governor, oh, well, so 1292 was vetoed because the governor believed that the PUC had done the right thing, essentially is it.
Okay.
We can pull do you have the governor's memo on that? Or?
I get it.
Yeah.
And why would it be an NA for protecting customers at risk of disconnection?
This was one that we did not take a position on. So NA means no position.
Oh, I thought it had not happened.
No. Well, I mean, not applicable. We didn't take a position on it
And why didn't we?
because it only impacted distribution rates.
So back to the 3264.
Yeah.
So it says savings of energy efficiency and demand response programs. And now it's including the CCAs.
Right. So this ties back as well to several other bills that were part of what was called the affordability package. And then ultimately to the governor's proclamation, emergency proclamation recently, calling on state agencies to essentially retrieve unspent money from these sorts of programs. So it's essentially a prelude. It's the legislature looking to find money that has not been spent, essentially, or that is not being spent wisely as gauged against cost effectiveness metrics, with an eye to trimming those programs. Again, there was a bill that was supposed to do that, didn't make it. And now we've got the governor with the proclamation trying to hunt down those funds. So all of that is of a piece.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yep. And Peter, just to close the loop on this, I would encourage you to take a look at the presentation that we did on IGFC back in April. It does a deep dive on kind of what it is, how it works. So it's there for you if you want to take a look at it.
No problem.
Okay. Okay, so that's affordability. Building decarb. So several bills here. There's the CEC grants. We didn't take a position on that. It didn't go anywhere. Transitioning mobile homes to all electric, we supported it, but it did not make it out of the legislature. The last two bills were passed. So SB 1210.
You want to change the slide?
Oh yeah, we're on slide 8 now. Thank you. Yeah. So SB 1210, we supported it. It did get passed. This requires IOUs to post information on service connections and schedules. This ties back to some earlier legislation that we called shot clock legislation that's supposed to expedite interconnection, energization of loads. That's been a recurring challenge statewide, but particularly acute in PG&E, where folks build a building or a factory or an apartment building, and then it just sits there empty because they literally can't plug it in. And then 1221, there's a bit of a story on that one. We had originally supported it because it seemed like it was going to be helpful, but then, once again, there were some last minute additions that seemed to invite CPUC oversight of CCA rates. And so we had a lot of back and forth. Obviously, that's a very sensitive issue for us in the CCA community. Our board set our rates, not the state. And so after much back and forth, we wound up in a place where we could at least be neutral on it as opposed to opposed. And that's the form that was ultimately adopted. So SB 1221. And please feel free to stop me if you have questions. I'm trying to rattle through all of these reasonably quickly, but happy to go deeper on them. Cynthia.
Yeah, I just have, so, on the face of it, I don't read all these bills. But on the face of it, it does seem good to file, a gas, map. So what was the problem with the bill? I mean, you said there was some.
Yeah, so 1221, an element of 1221 was to require or to establish pilots for essentially removing the gas service and replacing it with electric service in low-income housing, and which is great. But the ability to participate in the pilots was conditioned on somebody who participates in the pilots having the ability to get electricity at a rate that was the rate established for the provider of last resort, which means PG&E. Right, and so it was essentially compelling our customers to go to PG&E or for us to have our rates reviewed by the PUC, as does PG&E.
I see. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so that's 1221. Clean energy bonds. So SB 867, as Dan noted, this is a companion with Proposition 4. You may recall I presented on Proposition 4 a number of months ago. The board did support Prop 4, so and Prop 4 passed, so this bill goes forward as well. It's the legislature essentially operationalizing Prop 4, contingent on it passing. Transmission, a couple of reporting obligations here. One for the CAISO, that's AB 2779. Another for the investor-owned utilities, that's 1006, which we supported and which have passed into law. Those are good things. And then SB 1165 noted here because we did note it back in May. We had supported it. This was essentially going to be a carve out from CEQA for certain types of transmission projects. The idea was to make it easier to interconnect new facilities. We're dealing with a significant bottleneck around the development and interconnection of new generation. This would have been helpful in alleviating that, but didn't make it out. So, Peter?
Explain why 1165 died. Who opposed it?
I do not know the details on that. Dan, I'm assuming the Enviros, but I don't know.
I'm assuming it might have been labor, but I don't know.
It was actually held in the Appropriations Committee in the so-called suspense file.
But do you usually know the reason for that?
I believe there were objections to the streamlining. It's a sort of a black box process, as you may know, Peter. There's not a whole lot of disclosure or no one really knows why bills are held. But my sense, my guess is concerns about permit streamlining provisions of the bill. Going a bit too far.
Government didn't like it, or it was labor, or just because to me it's kind of important. So I'm just trying to figure out.
Labor liked it, so we just pulled up the filed support and opposition letters here. So Labor liked it.
Okay.
State Association State Association of Electric Workers, CUE, the Coalition of Cal. So that's the unions for the IOUs, large scale solar, NRDC, who tend to be aligned with PG&E in particular, and several CCAs were all supporting it. The only registered opposition came from the Farm Bureau Federation, interestingly.
So that's interesting.
Yeah.
So
go figure.
Is it dead then?
Yes. Yeah.
There will be new efforts.
There will be new efforts, and similarly on the federal side, we anticipate.
One of our local representatives, Buffy Wicks, is she having a hearing this week? I think it was this week.
I don't think so. The legislature's out of session.
Oh, I know. But she's having a session. She's having some kind of conclave.
Okay.
That's right. She held, I believe, yes, the second select committee on permitting reform, something of that sort, to look at ways to streamline permitting in any number of different areas: housing, energy, water infrastructure. She's taking a very comprehensive approach, and I do expect some legislation implementing some of the findings of these hearings. Yep. I'll also note, I did look at the appropriations analysis for the Padilla transmission bill. The fiscal impact that the CEC estimated was about $9.2 million annually, which in 21 positions, that's a significant fiscal estimate in a time of, budget austerity. So that could have been also a contributing factor.
One way state agencies can try to kill bills is by putting a big one.
Yeah, although the CEC has been trying for decades to take over transmission siting, and they've recently succeeded. So I suspect that they were probably supportive of this because it bulked up their authority. Interesting. Okay, good times. All right, procurement. So the one that we supported here was AB 1834. The story on that is a little bit convoluted, but the thrust of it is that right now there's a cost recovery mechanism for the Department of Water Resources if and when the Department of Water Resources has to procure capacity for entities like ours, should we fail to get it on our own. So you guys have heard us toss around the term RA, resource adequacy, and capacity, right? So this is, the notion of capacity is that there's a set of fixed costs for utility plants that have to sit around, whether you use them or not, they have to cover their nut, and so somebody has to pay for them to be there in case they're needed, whether or not they're needed. So that's a capacity payment. And then if they do run, there's a separate payment for the energy, right? In California, we call capacity resource adequacy, and all LSEs, including AVA, load-serving entities, including AVA, are required to procure certain amounts of capacity. If an LSE does not procure capacity, well, somebody's got to. The reason that you have to procure the capacity is so that the lights stay on. There's not enough capacity and load ends up being a little bit higher than expected. Rather than ramp up a plant, you have to ramp down the load, which is a nice way of saying you have to brown people out or black them out. So we have a series of fallbacks in case folks don't get the capacity that they're supposed to get. One of them is procurement by the Department of Water Resources. And so the PUC established rules for how the department would be compensated in the event that an LSE didn't do its procurement, and made backstop procurement very, very expensive and very, very painful. Okay, it's a deliberate policy choice. And so this bill would have unwound some of that and made it less painful, which we like. But the governor essentially said, harden up, folks. PUC made its decision, live with it, and that's the reason for the veto. Jim? Yeah.
Does the California legislation ever override a governor's veto?
It can. I mean, Dan, what are the requirements for overriding a veto?
A 2/3 vote in both houses, and I believe the last time it happened was in 1979, roughly. So it's
in theory.
Jerry Brown.
Okay, it happens a lot more often in other states, like even including Texas, and I don't know, maybe the rules are different or the politics are different.
Yeah. 2368, I flag for you because it was not something that we had taken a position on or recommended a position on, but it briefly morphed into something that was kind of concerning, and it was starting to monkey significantly with the resource adequacy program. Right now, resource adequacy is procured pursuant to the PUC's rules on a year ahead and a month ahead basis, and so this was gonna, among other things, potentially require multi-year procurement of RA. Which proved to be extremely controversial. And so we ended up spending a good bit of time monitoring this and chatting with the various folks that were pushing this or that. But what ultimately emerged was essentially a procedural requirement for the PUC to do a better job of aligning its various proceedings, which is fine. So that's where we are on that one. But it briefly was much more than that before it sort of reverted to the form that we saw it pass out as. Okay. Oh, and then finally, SB 1374. SB 1374 was an effort to exempt a specific subset of customer generators, specifically those in multifamily dwellings and schools, from some of the PUC's newly adopted net energy metering rules. And so the governor vetoed that again, a la the veto of the bill on IGFC that said the PUC went to a lot of time and effort, and we're not going to unwind that.
Todd, is that the same as a microgrid? Would that apply to microgrids?
No, these are all grid connected, right? So lots of different definitions for what's a microgrid, but kind of at core is the notion that it can island. And no, these are just grid connected customer generators. Okay. Electric vehicles, several of these were adopted. Again, we did not take a position on any of these bills, but you can see SB 59 by Skinner, I would point out particularly because it dovetails with Skinner's earlier SB 49 from 2019, which the CEC is in the process of implementing. So SB 49 allowed for the CEC to require certain load management certain load management technologies. This goes the next step and allows the listed agencies here to require not just management of load, but potentially provision of essentially generation from grid connected storage resources. So we will see what they do with that.
Is there a timeline on that one?
No, nope. They can do it or not in their discretion. Okay, and then last is 2054. This is by member Bauer-Kahan, who's a member of our delegation. I call this the Carla Peterman bill that would have stopped CEC or CPUC commissioners from going to a utility for 3 years after they leave. The only person I know who fits that definition is Carla. That ended up not passing. And that is it for
Why
this
didn't it
year.
pass?
What's that?
Why did it not pass?
I don't know.
At the beginning, if you go back to your outline at the very beginning of this presentation, one of the priorities was community development, and I didn't see that as a heading.
Yeah, there's not a lot in here that ended up being community development related.
Our priorities, and then more so establishing priorities we're tracking and following and taking positions on, and then as well as those that slotted into different categories into our actual slides. So there weren't a number of bills that we ended up tracking here related to community development.
Does AVA ever have bills that it proposes?
We have never run legislation as AVA. CalCCA, the organization of which we are a member, has sponsored legislation. I don't think any of it has passed. It's generally been around things like resource adequacy and the power charge and difference adjustment, which are difficult sells at the legislature. Yeah. Where the local development would manifest, if it does, is usually around establishing a program, and then our push will be to make sure that CCAs are eligible for whatever it is that's being set up. And some years you get some of that, and some you don't.
Oh, I have a quick question about the Proposition 4 or
807?
SB. Yeah, is there any plans for CCAs or for us or AVA with that big pile of money?
Yeah, there's relatively little of it that would fall to us. I mean, most of it's wildfire hardening, frankly. So, again, I'd refer you to the presentation I did in, I think it was September, that went into that in somewhat more detail.
Yeah, I remember that. We kind of were scratching our heads as to what all the water and cleaning up of forests and raking.
Right. Right.
If, you know, what it all meant, and I thought we just we were ambivalent toward it because it didn't really specify too many things, so we were just kind of interested. The other thing is I know this isn't on the list, but recently, maybe we could talk about it, somebody can talk about it from staff, is the recent developments from the IRA, the Inflation Recovery Act, and California was accepted, the federal government had accepted California's proposal, and it looks like there's some money rolling out with the tech incentive. Is any of that, can anybody from staff at some point in time, maybe not today, talk about the recent California legislation and programs for implementing the electrification and the progress with the Inflation Reduction Act?
I think that's one for the programs team. Yeah.
All right, oh, just a question. All right, Bill, very good. Do we have any questions?
We're not quite done yet.
Oh, you're not done?
No,
Sorry,
not quite done
apologize.
yet. So this is the look, or has been the look backwards, but we do have a couple of slides here looking ahead, and Dan and I will tag team those. So let me hand it to Dan to talk about what our delegation is going to look like next year.
So there will be 34 newly elected members of the legislature when they're sworn in December. This builds on 32 new members this past session. So in combination, about a third, a little over a third of the legislature will be new. So it's a significant turnover. Of our delegation, you'll see listed here incoming members: Senator McNerney, Senator Grayson, I'll say Senator-elect, and also, of course, these are unofficial election results, but I believe all of these incoming members are pretty solid in their vote outcomes. Senator Arriguin, and then Assembly Member Rhodesia Ransom. This also means, new opportunities to establish relationships, develop CCA champions, clean energy champions. You may know some of these names of our incoming delegation: former mayor of Berkeley, Senator McNerney, former congressman, wind energy entrepreneur, I believe. So interesting and significant opportunities to develop and strengthen relationships with our delegation members, especially where we see alignment in goals. New members, of course, bring new leadership and committee chairs. The one of note in the Senate is Senate Energy Committee. There are a handful of names being tossed around. The ones that are sort of rising to the top: Senator Josh Becker, representing the Silicon Valley area; Senator Susan Rubio, Southern California member; and Senator Padilla, representing sort of Imperial Valley area, Imperial County. So we'll see. We expect new committee chairs to be announced likely in December, just after they gavel down, maybe in January. And then with respect to Senate leadership, Pro Tem Mike McGuire, he, as you may all recall, was recently assumed his leadership post. But given that he's terming out in 2026, it's going to be a very short tenure. And in fact, the race to replace him has already begun. So it remains to be seen when that handover will occur. It could occur, relatively soon or towards the end of the session. We will see. Budget. we are just emerging from, I believe, a record budget deficit that the legislature was able to solve for relatively easily without a whole lot of drastic cuts, thanks to rainy day funds. We're not out of the woodwork yet. Both the Legislative Analyst's Office and the Department of Finance have projected multi-year budget deficits. Current tax receipts since June are above projections, fortunately, but also expenses are occurring above projections as well. So we're not anticipating, certainly not anticipating budget surplus environments. So it's going to be likely a difficult year, but the last bullet, as you can see, shows a significant amount of quote unquote borrowable money to help solve for some of the deficits that are projected. Next slide.
Yeah, sorry, we got a question in the room here, Dan.
Of course.
Thank you for this. Regarding the budget projected deficit in California, do we know whether there'll be, some of our monies come from the federal government? So do we see some additional deficits because there won't be the federal funding coming in, and specifically referring to the inflation, the bill that President Biden initiated and was signed off, the Inflation Reduction Act. Do we, I'm just curious if we see we'll see a lack of support from the federal government and how that might impact us here.
Well, California certainly benefited from the IRA receiving, I don't know the exact number within the clean energy or clean transportation space, but multi in double-digit billions it received. That's fortunately will help offset general fund reductions to some of those programs. The legislature has relied on the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. If you recall, AB 32 created, the sale of greenhouse gas emission allowances, funds, any number of clean energy, clean transportation programs. The legislature has borrowed from that pot of funding to backfill general fund reductions. And so thankfully, at least temporarily, we have federal funds to backfill the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. Long way of saying temporary reprieve thanks to the IRA, but compared to the broader budget, it's only a drop in the bucket. So social service programs, education, those are the biggest, take the biggest share of our budget, and will likely sustain some of the bigger cuts. But again, there is room to offset some of those cuts. So fingers crossed.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. You want to go ahead and bring us home on the last couple slides here?
Yeah, absolutely. So this list of concerns or issues we expect the legislature to deal with next year, many similarities to the list of this year. The couple differences, or one major difference, is cap and trade reauthorization. I just mentioned the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. It is the cap and trade legislation that essentially sets the framework for the auctioning of allowances, the revenues of which fund, again, all these clean energy programs. That program, while it sunsets in 2030, there is significant interest in starting the reauthorization process. It may be a 2-year process. Because it's going to be a difficult vote. It'll be a 2/3 vote bill. And lots of stakeholders have interest in shaping it to their liking. So that will take that will be a significant energy related, climate related bill that we will be tracking. And then finally, you may all have heard that Governor Newsom, in the wake of the election of President-elect Trump, convened a special session to essentially ensure that the state has sufficient resources, litigation resources, if needed, to defend against some of President Trump's policies. Similar to his first term, California and Governor Newsom especially tends to be at the tip of the spear when it comes to defending, quote unquote, California values. That, I believe.
Yeah, we've got a calendar in here for folks' reference, which largely tracks the one that we opened with, just adjusted for the upcoming year.
Yep.
Jim?
It's not legislation, but the Bay Area Air Quality Management District is rolling out zero NOx requirements, first on residential water heaters, but they're also doing furnaces and other types of water heaters over the next few years. That's going to have an impact on AVA because the zero NOx water heaters and furnaces are going to need to be electrically powered. There's statewide efforts as well on the Air Resources Board. Doesn't affect AVA, but South Coast Air Quality Management District is doing similar things. And I haven't heard whether the San Joaquin Air Resources Board or whatever it's called is doing anything, but it wouldn't surprise me if they did as well for NOx reasons. Is anybody at AVA tracking those? Paying attention to them?
To the back mud rules? No, we're not.
Okay.
Yeah.
I am trying to influence them.
No, that hasn't been in our scope.
Okay. I know JP's got something on the board agenda about it, but do we have anybody who's paying attention to those?
I don't know. It might be JP.
Okay.
I mean, building decarb would be up his alley. Like we certainly have been active in things like stretch codes, reach codes.
Okay.
For our local municipalities, but we haven't been following the statewide level.
JP has his hand raised, as well as
Yeah.
Okay. Speak of the devil.
Yep. JP, you want to jump in?
Hey, folks, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Oh, great. Okay. So yeah, we are participating in working groups with CCAs and the Backmud and CARB leadership around the Bay Area Air Quality Management zero emission NOx rules. We've been doing that for the last year or so. So that's something that we're quite active in understanding the impacts and working with Backmud leadership around rollout. We do have some work underway to streamline permitting for heat pump water heaters. That's what is coming to the board on the 20th. It's a scope of work with an organization, nonprofit organization called Solar App, which currently provides online permitting for solar and storage projects with most of our jurisdictions. And we are going to be funding the addition of heat pump water heaters to the Solar App online permitting platform and providing training to our permitting agencies or authorities having jurisdiction who provide permits for heat pump water heaters to kind of streamline that process, because the friction associated with residential heat pump swaps is quite high. So we're actively involved in the integration of and preparation for the 2027 zero NOx ruling that BACMUD is planning to roll out.
Couple questions for you, JP, on that one. Is AVA working with other CCAs, or are we taking the lead on that?
AVA is quite active in working with other CCAs. We have an active working group across the CCAs that are in BACMUD's territory around the heat pump rollout. As far as the funding of Solar App to add heat pumps to their online permitting platform, that's something that we've initiated on our own. We kind of are taking lead on it, something that we've worked through in coordination with other CCAs, just about kind of taking different roles and responsibilities in relation to the rollout. Once the heat pump water heater online permitting is available with Solar App, it will be available for any and all authorities having jurisdiction. The permitting departments can take it on anywhere in the state, but the funding that we're providing is to add the online permitting to the app and then provide training to our jurisdictions. And of course, any other CCA is welcome to provide funding for training for their jurisdictions, but we're not going to fund training for other jurisdictions outside of our service territory.
Okay. Well, I actually think that's a really good idea, and I'm glad you're doing it. Another question on that is and I didn't dig into it enough, so maybe it's already there. Is there something in the Solar App for demand flexibility control?
Hey, Jim, could I suggest that you guys take this offline? This is way far afield from state legislation last year, this coming year.
True.
Yeah.
This is true. So, and we want to do a time check. We have 2 more presentations, so we're gonna continue on.
Okay, so thanks, everybody. Appreciate your time and attention.
Pardon? Yes. Are there any public comments for this update?
Oh,
No, it's for the next item.
Alan Marling had his hand raised. Recognized for 3 minutes.
Okay, just briefly, I'm a Livermore resident. Briefly, I wanted to get on record that Gavin Newsom is the most corrupt man in California. It's shameful that he has taken indirectly and directly millions of dollars from PG&E, and he has since appointed the CPUC full of corrupt cronies who have dismantled the ability for California residents to build their own distributed solar because distributed solar cuts into PG&E profits. It's shameful that the governor vetoed the bill, which would have undone the damage to community distributed solar. And it's also shameful that the bill that was designed to curb some of the corruption in the CPUC did not pass. Thank you.
Thank you. It is. Well, do we have another public comment?
There are no further answers.
Are there any comments within the room? Questions? Are you closing?
Yeah, we're done.
Okay, very good.
So again, thank you for your time and attention.
It was a great presentation.
Oh, thank you, Cynthia.
I really, it was very thorough. I appreciate the dates and I appreciate the review of last year's legislation.
Yeah, well, we will be seeing you again in the springtime with the next go around. So thanks again, appreciate it, and we'll see some of you at the board meeting.
All right. Very good. We'll move on to the next agenda item, and this is an action item. So we will have a vote. So there's a request that the board adopt a resolution regarding on-bill credit allocation of surplus revenue from fiscal year 2023, 2024.
All right. Hi, this is Kelly Brezovec. Can you hear me?
We
Yeah.
can hear you.
Great. Thank you. All right. It doesn't look like you're going to get video going here right now, but that's okay. Most of you know what I look like. Hi, I'm Kelly Brezovec, Senior Director of Account Services. I'm happy to be speaking with the Community Advisory Committee, as well as any other members of the public and staff that are present today. So this evening, we'll be talking about the on-bill customer credits portion of the fiscal year 23-24 surplus. So let's go to the next slide, please. So just to review, the board adopted in January of 2024 a budget surplus allocation resolution, which outlined the following allocation. If there is any surplus, 50 million goes towards working capital, 100 million to reserves, and then the remaining would be split 60-40 between this on-bill credits and incentives for the AVA Solar Plus storage program. So I will be looking for feedback. I'll be providing a handful of different options for how to accommodate this on-bill credit, specifically with some portion applied to Carafera customers. Based on the 23-24 financial audit, we have about $22 million available for on-bill credits. Let's go to the next slide, please. We have done on-bill credits previously, and so here's just a quick review of what we have given to customers as on-bill credits in the past. Based on the fiscal year 22-23 budget, so this was approximately a year ago that we applied $7.27 to each residential customer. We also applied that $7.27 to care customers. And then commercial customers received 2/100ths of a penny per kilowatt hour in January 2024. I'll also note here that in August of 22, as part of that same budget cycle, care customers received $50. The budget cycle that just ended, the 23-24 budget cycle, included a $50 care credit as well. That was provided last November. So care customers now have received $50 in 22 and 2023. But the current budget that we're in, the 24-25 cycle, did not include this special care credit. So that's why we're including that care credit as part of this package that we're providing. The residential and commercial, as well as care credits for 2024 is what we're going to be talking about next. I will note here that the way that we've gotten to these numbers, the care credit amount was predefined. And then for the 22-23, that 727 that we arrived at for residential customers, that came really by looking at total load, right? This is a credit that we're providing back to customers, sort of based on their energy use, their energy bills. And so what we did is we split the amount that we had. It was roughly $10 million. We split that kind of a 60-40 split based on annual usage, and commercial customers use more energy than residential customers on the whole. For residential customers, it was most manageable and sort of best applied evenly for all residential customers. For commercial customers, we split that up by kilowatt hour. And let's go to the next slide. Okay, so this is an eye chart. You'll see the 2023 column is there. This is just to give you a little bit of a reminder of here's what customers received last year. And added here, you see what that 2/100ths of a penny kind of works out to be for commercial customers. Now, in this case, let's look at the second row where it's, or third row, I guess, where it says Carafera. So in order to arrive at these numbers, we started first by, let's look at option 3. We started by saying, what if we gave each Carafera customer $75? Okay, Carefare customers get $75. Subtract out that amount from this total of $22 million, and then allocate the rest to residential and non-residential customers using that same pro rata allocation that we've done previously based on annual usage. So that's how options 1, 2, and 3 were handled. For option 4, this is actually a Carefare credit of $50. But in this case, we also gave our Carefare customers the residential credit, because what we're trying to do is make sure that everyone does at least receives at least as much credit as they did last year in options 4 and 5. So option 4 is a care credit of $50. Option 5 is a care credit of $40. Okay. So what we're recommending is, I think if we go to the next slide, you'll see what we're recommending is we're proposing option 3, where care customers receive a $75 credit, residential customers receive nearly double what they received last year, and non-residential customers receive 2.6 hundredths of a penny per kilowatt hour, which for your medium commercial customer works out to about $500 as an on-bill credit. Now, on the next slide, we're going to just look at sort of how has this affected customers' bills. So looking at 22, 23, and 24 for our Carefare customers, what we see here, if we look at the graph, I'll just note, so PG&E bills, this is the average electric bill. This is both the AVA and the PG&E, or the generation and delivery components of the bill. We see 2019, 2020, 2021. We see AVA and PG&E bills were about the same. I mean, AVA was a little bit lower, but you recall that we had a slightly lower savings on Bright Choice. And then you'll see in 21, 22 is where we see that we were able to start offering a larger savings for Bright Choice. This green line, though, you'll see that green line is AVA with credits. And here what you see is that the credit is helping to sort of offset that increase in average bill that we would otherwise see. So if we look at the 2023 bill for a care customer, the average bill would have been $904, but it was actually $846 annually due to this $50 care credit, which is lower than that they actually paid in 2022, right? So we're helping to offset those increases that customers otherwise would see. So we're helping to absorb some of that impact of these bill increases and just general energy rate increases. So this is modeled here with a 2024 credit of $75. That's that option 3 that we provided earlier. So we go to the next slide. We did present this at the Finance Administration and Procurement Subcommittee, but they didn't have a quorum, so I don't have a recommendation coming out of that committee. But following the board's approval, we will move forward with on-bill credits, starting potentially as early as December, pending pending just getting this on the bill the right way. And that's it. I'm here for questions.
Do we have any online questions?
You're looking for a recommendation on one of those options from the CAC?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, the board will be voting on this tomorrow. And so if there is, or excuse me, on Wednesday. And so if there is a particular direction you'd recommend that they go, then I'd accept that. I think, the board would be interested to hear what you have to say.
I have a question.
Yes.
Why the recommendation for option 3 versus the others? Why was that your recommendation?
Because that option allows each customer class to receive more than they received last year.
Because of the rate.
It's the other ones don't hit everybody the same way.
Right, option 2 does as well. Right, your non-residential customers also do slightly better. Your residential customers do a little bit better. Option 3 honestly just seemed like a pretty fair allocation.
Ms. Landry.
Yes, thank you for this presentation. I'm just curious, how many of our low-income customers, what percentage or what is the number of low-income customers that their electricity bill gets turned off?
Oh, well, that's a little bit of a different question. I'm afraid I don't have that information, certainly at my fingertips. And I'll also add to that it's not just our low income customers that may get shut off for non-payment. You know, that can happen to across all sectors that we serve.
So I do think this question's been asked before, and I don't believe since PG&E holds the keys to JP, I don't know if you're still there.
That's fine. This would be a question that I would answer.
Okay, so that I don't believe that Ava has the ability.
Right, this isn't necessarily information that we receive on a regular basis.
Okay, sorry. Let me ask my question differently then.
Okay.
What percentage or what of Ava customers, and again, I'm asking specifically the low-income customers, what percentage are behind on their bills?
I don't have that information on my as part of this item.
Where I'm going with this is, you know, I would like to see, and it's probably not in this, you know, I've been giving, you know, $75 or $100 is, you know, good. And I do see where we may want to, you know, spread it evenly or somewhat evenly, you know, across our commercial and other customers, including low income. I would like to see out of this some additional funds set aside for low-income customers, Cara customers. You know, I know that there is some federal, well, PG&E does have some, you know, give some assistance. But I'd like to see, you know, some emergency fund or something set aside for the, again, low-income folks. So do you have any?
Yeah, that's not really part of this item. The board had approved that we provide on-bill credits with these surplus revenues. So that was their direction on that. What you're requesting is a different type of program.
Okay.
Member Landry?
We can also address that at a future time, and we
Or
can
we
put
can
it on
make a
our
comment. We can make a
bucket
comment.
list, yes.
There was a bill that was passed that SB, was it 12, which one was it? That added more protections. Was it SB 1142?
Oh, very good. Yeah,
So
that was
how
in the
does-
last presentation.
for
It says
protections
add
for
more
Kara.
protections for customers at risk of disconnection. And that was signed by the governor.
So that must be a California fund then. Yes.
That's what it sounds like.
Yeah.
Okay, Member Weiner, please.
I'm not sure I understand this correctly, but I think what I was seeing was that FARA customers were paying 800 and something, is it per month or per year?
That was an annual figure.
An annual figure. So giving them $100 is a lot,
Yeah.
meaningful.
Yes, it's a meaningful credit. You know, certainly for some customers, you know, that's an average. So for some customers, that may be more than 1 month's portion of their electricity bill.
So for the ordinary customer, you're giving $11, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And the annual bill for that customer is what?
It's more than the CareFara customer. I believe I have that in the memo. Just 1 second. Our default, our regular sort of non-income qualified customer average electricity bill is closer to $1,500 to $1,700 annually.
Right, and you're giving them on-bill credit of maybe $11.
Mm-hmm.
So the only reason I see for giving any money to non-CareFara customers like me is to hope that I will like Ava a little bit better because I just got $11. I don't think that's going to happen. So to me, in terms of bang for the buck, I'm not clear why I want to give on-bill credit to people who are not low income, because if I give it all to the low income folks, they're going to get maybe, I don't know, $200. And that would be really meaningful to them. So otherwise, I'm not, other than politics, in other words, gaining favor with people by saying you're giving them $10, I'm not seeing a reason to give it to those of us who are
Peter,
paying $1,700 a year and don't really.
But I think if you get rewarded if you have solar or if you're doing electrical, you get a reward, and I think we should reward people who have become, gone electric.
They're
In
paying less
addition.
anyway. If they have,
Correct.
if they already have solar, they're not paying $1,700 because they're not paying for the gas.
Right.
They're sending money back to the grid and getting something, and not
Right.
as much as they'd like. I don't know. Can you explain why I'm wrong and why we should split the money as you say? I understand, by the way, for commercial customers, there's some small businesses out there who aren't doing very well. And so I'm not talking about that.
So this was the direction provided by the board. So I'll start off with that. And also, it does also help on an annual basis to differentiate AVA from PG&E. That additional 10, let's just call it $10. That adds a little bit bigger delta between the total average bill. Another nice thing is we doing this in the winter time when customer bills tend to be pretty high in our territory. It just helps to soften that increase that we oftentimes see as quite honestly due to natural gas usage in the wintertime. So it does help to kind of soften that a little bit. But really the extra revenues generated, they were on behalf of all customers that were paying their bills. So I think there's also, this is sort of an everyone paid into this, and so everyone receives the benefit. But that's a good question for the board, because this was their, this is how they saw to share the surplus revenues.
Another question for you. This is Jim. How many CareFara eligible customers are actually enrolled? And do you have some sense of, like, we've got most of them, we have half of them, we have 10% of them?
As far as all,
Of the residential customers, what fraction of them would be CARE and FARA qualified? And what fraction of the ones that would be qualified are actually enrolled in the program and would get these benefits?
That's a great question. So Ava has, I'll start by saying that Ava does on a very regular basis send out information to customers that we think may qualify for CARE or FARA, but are not currently enrolled in the programs. And there are many reasons why customers may choose to not enroll in these programs. CARE, when you read CPUC reports on these programs, they will actually say that CARE is oversubscribed, that there are folks that are receiving CARE benefits that do not qualify. And these reports that come out of the CPUC will also say that FARA is not fully subscribed. It is undersubscribed. And there are some upcoming changes to the FARA program that we hope will grow that program. FARA today has a requirement for the number of people in a household, and they are reducing or changing that requirement, so it does not need to be multi-person household. And that will hopefully increase the participation in that program.
we have a question.
Before, I wasn't quite finished.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Would it be possible to sort of combine maybe Peter's observation with like better recruitment and enrollment in the programs for people that are eligible but aren't enrolled for whatever reason, to spend some of this extra money on getting people who should be in the program but aren't? Sort of a comment or a question, I'm
Well,
not sure which.
I'm not sure, are we making a motion to agree with number 3 as an option, or can we support another option because of what Peter said? Like, could we say that, I mean, it wouldn't change, if you look at option 1,
Yeah.
it wouldn't change what the residential people get, like $7, same $7. And it's a little bit less what the non-residential get, but the CARE FARA get the most. So could we, I mean, it sounded, Kelly, like it was just logical to kind of be in the middle with the number 3, but could we suggest that you go with number 1 because it's more supportive of the CARE FARA?
Certainly, you are welcome to provide that feedback to the board during the CAC summary.
We can move to approve this program with a choice of option 1.
I would like to make that motion.
Okay, we also have another question from Member Harper.
Okay, sorry.
Thanks. So just for clarity, we're relying on an ad hoc committee's recommendations for what Ava should do with its budget surplus. Is that correct?
No, so which ad hoc committee are you?
I think you said like a finance and procurement
No,
committee.
so I had hoped to have the finance, administrative, and procurement subcommittees recommendation to bring forward to the board to provide, their feedback. However, we didn't have a quorum, so the board will be opining on this and ultimately adopting a resolution at Wednesday's meeting.
And is this time bound?
How so?
Is there a latest time to spend down budget surplus? Or did you go ahead?
I think that's really a board decision.
Okay.
What
where my question's coming from is it seems like it wouldn't be too difficult to send out a survey across the service territory to get a response from a broad base of customers about what they think the agency's budget surplus should be used for. Maybe offer a couple of different options outside of just bill credits. And maybe for commercial customers, especially larger ones, I could see and maybe you already do this, but is giving an option to forego their own bill credit, knowing that it would go to somebody who might need it more. You know, and you're in a grocery store and the cashier asks if you want to donate to a local animal shelter, and you're like, damn, yeah, I should probably give a few dollars somewhere that needs it more. Just thinking, reflecting on some of the things I've already mentioned, I do doubt the relative like marketing benefit of like $10. So just trying to think about ways that maybe there are win-win strategies that give people more of a choice or an option, and what, you know, as you say, we all pay into what that money goes toward.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So the board adopted back in January this scheme for managing on the surplus and providing these on-bill credits. So I think this is a great, you know, I think there was, as part of the work plan that was discussed earlier today, the budget is one of those items that would come to the CAC. And I think that's a great time to sort of dig into those items and provide that feedback to the board.
David.
Thank you. It'd also be great if that feedback could be relayed for the upcoming meeting. I have a sense that they're not going to change their minds overnight, but
right. I wouldn't say on this item, but you know, when we start to talk about the 24-25 budget, I think that's an opportunity to discuss how to handle any surplus for the 24-20, or excuse me, we're in the 24-25. Should in January we see that we also have the opportunity to have a similar conversation, then that would be the time to discuss what we're going to do with those funds in a year. And when we are talking about the 25-26 budget, again, that's an opportunity to have this conversation, but this was already voted on by the board. And so we're just putting into operations what the board had requested.
Understood. Sounds like a responsible path forward. Please do follow up, and don't let it slide into the next year, because I think this can be done a lot more
So what I'm
equitably.
recommending is this is part of the CAC work plan to discuss the budget. And so, yeah, so I'm actually, I'm putting it back on the CAC, right? If this is an item that you would like, that you want to look at for future budgets, like it's during the budget cycle that you would look at that.
Right, and what I'm saying, I think, is just please keep us apprised of appropriate time to do that when it comes up again, as we've got a lot of different items and issues that we're juggling.
Okay.
Thank you, Member Harper. Peter Weiner.
Well, I think we have a motion.
We do, and yeah.
But I would just like to reiterate it. I think I seconded it. The motion to recommend approval of option 1 to the board, and further recommend that they consider a wider range of options to spend the surplus in the future.
Is there a
I think
second?
that's,
Is anybody seconding? I think.
well, I made the motion and he clarified what the motion should be. And we need a second.
Good. Okay, can we bring that option?
We haven't yet, we haven't had public comment. Hold on a second. There are no hands raised at this time for public comment.
Okay, so the option 1 would be recommended, and consideration of more flexibility in budget surplus in the future. And we have that seconded, so can you please bring that to a vote?
I have a point of clarification to the presenter. I know that we had discussed small business, and I just want to be clear, is this $27, is that an annual bill credit?
That is option one for the small business is $27. And for the medium is 328, and the large is 42.82.
But that's $27 annually.
Annually.
That is correct.
That is a one-time bill credit.
One-time bill credit.
For year 2024.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, this is just one time.
Okay, let's proceed with the vote.
Thank you. Member Landry.
Yes.
Member Weiner.
Yes.
Member Bakasini.
Yes.
Member Stevenson.
Yes.
Member Harper.
Yes.
Member Lewis.
I'll abstain.
Chair Susan.
Yes.
Motion is approved.
At this point, without further questions, thank you very much, Ms. Kelly, for the presentation. Thank you, it was very thorough, and thanks for answering all our questions. I'd like to move on to the next item, and that would be future agenda items. Is there anybody that has any, would like to add on any agenda items for next meeting?
The Resiliency Hub.
We'll be getting something on the resilience hub. Okay.
Resilience Hub? Yes, so we would like to add that Resilience Hub's presentation.
And the
from-
business development plan? Wasn't that what Member Landry was talking about, having an update on the business development plan?
Oh, okay, business development plan. Sorry, I didn't hear him quite clearly. Okay. So we'll add that to the agenda for the following meeting in December.
But maybe because the Resilience Hub is going to be such an in-depth discussion, maybe that should be just the topic. I mean, maybe we shouldn't do anything else.
Yeah, well,
I mean, like,
Chair,
not
the
the-
Chair Hernandez to, he'll be able to weigh in on that too.
Because the business development plan probably needs its own time too, so. we don't wanna-
Okay. Yes.
Probably not next month, but it's my understanding, and I was not able to attend the executive committee, which I occasionally listen to. But it's my understanding that the SMUD contract and possibly the call center is coming up for renewal. And I would like to see that agendized here before the board, before the AVA board votes on that item. I don't know if it's in.
It's probably going to vote on Wednesday.
It is going to be voted on Wednesday?
Yeah, and what it is, thank you.
Yeah, Kelly, are you still here? Would you like to speak on this
Yeah,
one?
sure. I think, yes. So the agreement on Wednesday that will be a board action item is really it's just a 2-year extension of the current agreement. This was not a do a big RFP and really get into the nitty gritty of all the details. This was an extension, particularly since, we do have our new community enrollments coming up in 2025 with Stockton and Lathrop. This was really continuation of services to have SMUD be our back office provider or call center and data management service provider.
I also thought that we were agreeing to a higher rate per customer.
Yes, I mean, it's a contract extension with a time and price change.
Member Lang?
Yes, I just would like to add a footnote here. It's my understanding that we agreed at some point to have a local call center here in this county. I think, are the SMUD representatives housed in Alameda County, or are they, but there was an interest in having the reps come from Alameda County. In other words, we would have at some point a local call center. I know that SMUD does a good job, but, and they're very good, I know that, but the intent was to have it moved into this county. Am I correct on that, or is my?
That has been discussed. I don't know that I would say that it was an intent. It has come up as a point of discussion, certainly. I will say that SMUD, as of right now, has at least 2 customer service representatives that do currently live within our territory. And I will add that it is a union call center. And SMUD just received another approximately 100 applications to work in their call center from their customer service center that currently live within AVA's current or future territories.
So it's 2 out of how many folks at the call center?
I don't have that number.
Okay. I think when you, if you could, Chair Souza, in your report on Wednesday, make a, just add that footnote that about having a local call center.
Okay, is that
When I
okay, or
make-
would we have to vote on that as a recommendation? It's just okay.
This is the.
For the SMUD item.
Right, that was not on the agenda for this meeting today.
I thought we were just talking about our
You
agenda.
guys actually place on future agendas.
Okay.
Right, future agendas.
Yeah.
And
Well, is it being voted on Wednesday? That's.
Yeah, this is on the board agenda on Wednesday, and I'd recommend if you did want to share an opinion on this item, because it's not on the CC agenda, then you're welcome to make public comment speaking on behalf of just yourself.
I could.
Well, it's been discussed here previously. Yeah.
There's, if you look at the slides for the presentation for the board meeting on Wednesday, it discusses some of that discussion actually is referenced in the slides for the board on Wednesday.
If I may make a request, if you can write a short note letter and just, make that note, I can present that.
Okay.
As a member of the public, it's not something that we can vote on right now. So if you're not available for that, you can make a.
Okay.
That would be very helpful. All right. Are there any more items for the agenda? Okay, well, we went a little long here, apologize for that. Thank you all for staying with us. It is now 8:46, and this meeting is now adjourned.
Well done, Chair.
Yeah, good job, yeah.
Thanks all. Have a good night.
You.
Thank you all. Take care.